Hello, dear listeners. I know it's a sin to have favorites, but on this week's episode of You Are What You Read, we are joined by Mitch Albom, our dear friend, and his brand new novel, Twice, which is out today. This is a book you want to get for yourself, you want to share it. It's going to be in every Christmas stocking. It's that great. Mitch is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Tuesdays with Morrie. His books of fiction and nonfiction have sold 42 million copies in 48 languages worldwide. Mitch was inducted into both the National Sports Media Association and Michigan Sports Halls of Fame, and Mitch is the recipient of the 2010 Red Smith Award for Lifetime Achievement for his work for the Detroit Free Press. And in a time in our country when newspapers are shuddering and fraught, Mitch led the way with his unique writing style, which led him into the world of nonfiction and now novels. Mitch founded the nonprofit Say Detroit, S-A-Y Detroit, supporting Detroit community members with healthcare, housing, and education initiatives. He also founded a dessert shop and a gourmet popcorn line to help fund it. So our Mitch Albom is very entrepreneurial. Mitch operates Have Faith Haiti, a home and school for impoverished children and orphans in Port-au-Prince, which he visits monthly. Now, the novel we're going to talk about today is called Twice, and it's all about second chances. And we were thrilled that many of you wrote in with your questions and second chance stories, which Mitch and I share today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and it's always a thrill, and my heart is just full of love for the great Mitch Albom. Let's just start by saying you're really a master craftsman with your novels. You really are. They're all different. And yet there is this, when I open the book to read it, I don't care what point I am at in the story, I am so deeply immersed in the story. And people wrote in and they say, geez, nobody writes characters like Mitch. I kind of believe it.
That's really nice of you. Coming from you, Adriana, who's really a master at creating characters and ones that I really love and family and all that. That's very humbling. Thank you for saying that.
All right. Okay. Well, let's dive in.
All right.
Okay. How's Janine doing? Is she good?
She's good. She's up with the kids right now.
Uh-huh.
We had 22 Haitian kids living with us all summer long because all of our kids from our orphanage can't go back to Haiti.
Mm-mm.
Travel bans and danger, and they're all in college. We have 18 of them in college, so they were back here. Then we had 2 from medical school, and then some other ones. So dinners here were really something over the summer. Now we're down to 6, and it feels like there's nobody here. It's so she's up taking care of all of them. But thank you for asking about it.
How fantastic. That is God's work. And we will post with everything else how the readers can pitch in and help in Haiti. And you always have lots of ideas and lots of places to send us, but we'll make that happen too. We're
Thanks.
going to start. Okay. Twice to me it's a tagline that's too simplistic to say it's about second chances. It's about fate. It's about desire. It's about dreams and goals and yes, luck. And yes, blessings, but all of that, all of that in the storytelling leads us to the pith, which is what Susanna's question is about. She wants to know, this is Susanna B from Instagram. Mitch, what inspired you to write this novel? Was it the same inspiration that you used for your other books? Or did you have a new inspiration, such as the one you had with Tuesdays with Morrie?
Well, so I think ever since Tuesdays with Morrie, which was broken down, Adriana, chapter by chapter, subject
Mm-hmm.
by subject,
Mm-hmm.
my brain is probably always kind of organized like that. And so when I sit down to do a book, I kind of think, what theme do I want to write about? I don't think about plots. I don't think about characters. I know that's different than a lot of writers. I think about, like, what theme do I want to address? And I guess it sort of stems from sitting across from Morrie, and every week we're like, all right, what are we going to discuss this week? And then we had to stay within the parameters of that, even though we
Mm-hmm.
kind of moved outside of them. So when I wrote The Five People You Meet in Heaven, for example, my first novel, I didn't say, let me write a book about heaven and a guy who goes to heaven. First, I said, I want to write something for people who feel they don't matter. And that was my motivation. And heaven was just a device by which, Eddie in the book finds out that he did matter. He
Mm-hmm.
mattered a lot. And, all throughout my books have been like that. When I wrote Stranger in the Lifeboat, I didn't want to write a book about people being stranded out in the ocean and a guy gets into their boat and says he's God and comes to save them. First, I wanted to write a book about help. And,
Mm-hmm.
what happens, we're always asking for help, but yet
Mm-hmm.
we have it in front of us so often, and a lot of times we don't recognize it. So with Twice, my new book, the idea was really about grass is always greener. It was really that simple. Like, as you get older, I'm sure not that you're anywhere near as old as me, but um, you start to run into people. You start to notice the sea change where, when you're young, you think, I want to try this. Maybe I should try this, and you go and do it. Maybe I should get married. You get married. Maybe I should try this career. You try that career. Maybe I should try another career. Try another career. And there's some point in your life where you start saying, I should have, instead of I'm gonna. And then that
Mm-hmm.
starts to become an echo. And the older
Mm-hmm.
you get, the more you say that. And I've been hearing that more and more from the people that I hang out with who are closer to my age.
Well, a lot of people are saying that this book is making them look at the relationships that built
Right.
them.
Right.
Oh
Well,
my, and you dive into, man, romantic love. I think this is your most romantic
oh, no
book.
question. Because
Romantic.
that was the second part of it, was like, all right, well, I'm going to write a book about grass is always greener. There's people saying I should have tried this career or I should have lived in this country. Yeah, it's all good.
Mhm.
But the thing that people torture themselves the most over privately is love. Like, did I pick the
Of
right
course.
person? Did I
Oh,
should have? There was that
right.
one that I dated in high school, and we really had something. And there was that one that got away. We had that fight, and I never. They're always, I should have. And you imagine, it's so easy to imagine a life with somebody else. So I wanted to write about, well, what if you got the chance to do it? And so the protagonist in the book, whose name is Alfie, finds out that he gets two chances at everything in his life. He gets to go back and do one more time of it, but only one more time. So it's not a time
Mm.
travel book where you just keep repeating. It's not Groundhog Day. It's not, you get to do it
No,
over.
no, no, no,
You
no.
get one shot at it, and you have to live with the consequence of your second try. Well, this all works out really well for him, for the most part. When he's a kid, he misses the basketball shot at the end of the game. He goes back, and he knows where the ball is going to go, so he steals it and he makes a shot. And he embarrasses
Mhm.
himself at a makeout party, but then he goes back and he acts really cool, and he's. But then he finds out, and this was where the book really took off, that when he becomes a man, he learns from his grandmother, who he finds out has the same power as him, that there's one caveat to the magic. It doesn't work with love. In fact, it works in the opposite. So if someone loves you, if someone out there loves you truly, and you decide, now I want to try somebody else, but you
Mhm.
kind of wait over here for me while I go try someone else. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't work. They can never love you again. So if you're going to go try to redo things, you can do it. You can try somebody else. You can try another love, another life, but that person, their love is gone. So you really have to make a decision on what is true love, and how valuable is it to you, because you don't get to do that part of it again. And of course, he comes to a fateful choice with the woman that he
Mhm.
thinks is perfect, and they have this great love story until something happens, and then he starts to think about, well, what would the possibilities be like? And in a fit of, like, emotion and fights and rage, he makes a very fateful decision, and then the book really takes off because now he's faced with, what do I do if she doesn't love me the way she used to?
You know, in every Mitch Albom book that you feel the time that you write in is so rich and so real and accurate culturally. And in this book, I call them like like notes from a xylophone with you,
Mm,
because Alfie, you mentioned what's it all about. Alfie, you find out how he gets his name. You give us, in light of the romance, there will be grace notes. There's a wonderful conversation, and I just wish he had lived to read it, about Robert Redford.
mm,
And you know, I almost think you're prescient, like you hear sounds and notes and chimes maybe all of us don't hear, but they're woven into the novel with such ease and beauty that it makes it of the moment, yet it doesn't have to be. I marveled at your use of time. It was never confusing. It was always really clear what decision then led to where we were in the story.
thank you.
Did you struggle with that, or
Yeah,
did you?
I'm glad
Yeah,
you
it's
mentioned
hard.
that because
It's
that
hard.
honestly, that's the hardest part about writing anything that has to do with time travel of any kind is,
Mhm.
okay, you can set up a magical world, but then you have to follow your own rules. And
Mhm.
you know this well, there's so many readers out there who are just waiting to say, wait a minute, you said that if he does this, then he does that. And it's kind of funny because they're saying, wait a minute, you said if he can turn somebody into a toad, then he can turn it. But actually, a toad is not a frog. It's like, wait, we're really arguing over this. You're accepting the premise that he can turn into a toad, but you're saying it's a little too specific that a toad's not a frog. So I had to be really careful about. So the rules for Alfie are, you get to go back. You can do something again twice, but you have to live with the consequences a second try, and you have to live from that moment forward. You can't say,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to go back, fix that, and then I'm going to go back to the future and see how my life is all changed all over again. I stepped on a butterfly, and now how has the world changed? You have to endure it over again. So there's a moment, for example, where a friend of his in high school dies tragically. I don't want to go too far
Right.
into it.
Right,
And
right, right, right.
he's asked to do the like a speech at high school graduation about him, and he just says, I don't want to do that. I don't want to break down for him. So he doesn't. But then the school principal gets up and does it instead, and mispronounces his friend's name, and he gets so upset because he sees his friend's mother sitting in the crowd, like embarrassed, like, oh, they're talking about my dead son, and he mispronounced his name. So he says, well, I'm going to go back and do it. So he goes back 2 weeks, accepts the invitation to speak at the high school graduation, but now he has to take all his finals all over again. And that was he's like, that was a pain, but okay, I had to do it. So you have to set up those rules and follow them. And it's fun. It's like you're creating a world, but you got to be very careful with time travel that it makes sense.
The way you lay out the characters in terms of their romantic inclinations was so delicious to me. It felt completely real.
Thank
It
you.
felt like I was back in high school again. And I wanted to know, did you collect these stories, these high school stories, or are
Well,
they a
I
little
I
personal?
hate to admit it, but many of Alfie's terrible, embarrassing mistakes with girls were taken right from my own life. There's a moment where he goes to try to speak to a pretty blonde girl, and his moves his hands awkwardly and knocks a glass of milk into her lap, and she looks up from the milk in her lap with this disgusted look on her face, and all he can say is, "Look at that," and then he walks away. That is literally exactly what happened to me with a pretty blonde girl when I was about 14 years old. And I don't know why I said, look at that, but I just disappeared. I never saw that girl again. So I said, well, you can't make up stuff better than that. So let me
Mm-mm.
just use that. Or there was a scene there when they were having a makeout party. And
Mhm.
I went to one of those and was in a closet with a girl, who I had a little bit of a crush on, but I wasn't used to the dark, and I hadn't really kissed anybody. And so our noses banged. And I remember specifically she said, "Ow." And like I wrote in the book, "Ow" is not a good prelude to a kiss. And but that's what it was for me. And so
My
again,
God.
I'm not going to go ask somebody else their story. I had that, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I try to make it real because it really happened. So I'm glad to hear you say it rings true, because it is. It's going to be very embarrassing when I go out on this book tour, because I'm literally going to admit every stupid thing I ever did in front
Oh,
of a girl, which I
those girls
incorporate.
are those girls are going to show up, Mitch. They're going to show
I,
up.
I don't
You're going
know.
to see them. That's going to be a head spinner. I stopped and I would underline. This is one of my favorite lines. A guy will follow any girl that waves at him.
Yeah. Well, that's a
I mean, there's just such wisdom here. Yeah,
but
but it's delish. You're famous for that though. People
well,
write lines down from your books and put them on posters so they have them around.
well, I'm not sure they're going to put
Um,
that one on a poster,
I
but
kind of love it. Well, that's my quirky sense of humor.
yeah.
Okay. Edie Bartanis Cohen on Instagram asked, Mitch, do you think if most people were given a chance to do one aspect of their life over, they would choose the same because they are uncomfortable with good life choices?
I think a lot of people would choose to do the same, but I don't think it's because of that reason. I do think people are genuinely smart enough to know that uh, if they made a really terrible mistake and they had a chance
Mhm.
to go back and correct that mistake, they would undo it. You got
Mhm.
drunk and drove your car into a ditch or hurt somebody. We give you the chance to do that again. I don't think people are going to say, yeah, I like drinking so much. I'm going to go back and do the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But I do think that more people than you think would say, I'm going to leave things alone for this reason. People
Mhm.
have already started asking me when they found out about what Twice is about, and it's about getting second chances. Is there anything in your life that you would go back and do over again? And Adriana, I get the feeling like when they look me in the eye, like they're expecting me to say, well, of course not. I've lived my life exactly the way I wanted to. Morrie taught me, to never make a mistake. Like I'm on some kind of pedestal. And the first thing I say to them is 100%. I'll pull out a laundry list right now of 25 things that I would do over like that. But
Me
if the
too.
price for doing them over was I didn't get to learn the lesson from the mistake that I made, then my
Mhm.
answer would have to be no, because every one of those mistakes forged me in some way, changed me for the things that came next, and
Mhm.
enabled me to make better decisions down the road. And I wouldn't have those decisions if I hadn't learned the mistakes. I thought maybe this was one of the lines you were going to underline, because for me it's sort of the essence of the book. When when Alfie finds out that he has this power from
Mhm.
his grandmother, who
Mhm.
has it too, he starts getting all excited and he starts asking her all these questions. Oh, wow, I didn't know someone else had this power. Do we this? Do we that? And one of the questions he keeps asking over and over is, how come it's only two? How come it's only two? Why do we only
Yeah.
get two
Yeah.
chances? Why do we get more chances? And she becomes exasperated with him. She doesn't want to answer it. And he keeps asking. So finally she turns to him. She says, Alfie, if you kept getting second chances, you wouldn't learn a damn thing. And
Mm.
that to me
It's a
is the
great one. That's another great one.
it's the essence of the book, because Groundhog Day, you don't learn anything, because you just it goes wrong, you
Mhm.
fix it. But when you make a mistake and you can't go back, and of course that happens to
Mhm.
Alfie in the book when he makes this fateful decision with Gianna, the girl that he really loves, that's when he really learns something. Up till then, he's kind of pathetic, he's
Mhm.
he's just kind of covering his tracks with his power. So I really believe that that's true. If we kept getting second chances, we wouldn't learn anything. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't like some.
There's this sense too, throughout all your canon of books, you really, really sometimes you own the eternal life, like the five people you meet in heaven. But I have noticed as I continue to read your canon that there's always some element of redemption. There's a redemption. You're really a person who believes in it. It's in your work. Can you speak to that?
Because, well, yeah, because I've been redeemed. Uh, you
Mm.
know, my my life is a really good example of second chances. and second opportunities. I lived quite a different life, and I was quite a different person before Morrie, and then
Yeah.
what I called Tuesdays with Morrie, which are two different things. Morrie for me was a personal experience, and it was a very seminal experience long before I knew it was going to be a book. Remember, 2 years passed from the time that I sat with Morrie as he was dying and kind of had my life turned around. And then when a book came out about it, which nobody expected to do anything, and I was going back to being a sports writer. Um, I have had second chances with even my own love life. I was engaged to somebody before Janine, and it didn't work out. She broke it off, and I thought, well, I guess that was it, and who knows? And yet I ended up meeting the most incredible woman and having an incredible marriage and love story, which was a second go around. And probably the biggest thing for me is we didn't have children because we got married very late, and I kind of thought that ship had sailed. And then
Oh,
in my 50s I ended up with an orphanage, and now in my 60s I have a 3-year old who we've had since she was 6 months old, and she's the joy of my life. And this morning before talking to you, I took her to school because school's just started when we're taping this, and
right.
she was hugging my leg. Daddy, I'm going to miss you when I go in. I'm going to miss you, Daddy. I mean, who gets to hear that, now? So I'm a walking personification of second chances and redemption. And I know how it feels to have a chance to be better and have a chance to, feel better about who you are than you did earlier in your life. And I love to share that in my stories. I guess that's why most of my characters at some point or another end up redeemed. And yeah, that's why I get accused of having happy endings. And I keep thinking, why is that an accusation?
Why can't it just be
Thought
true?
it was a compliment. Yeah.
So many people wrote in because they are inspired by you and Janine's commitment. Can you take us just tell us um, what it's meant to you to bring these kids and make them family and
Well,
bring them into your family?
first of all, we get way too much credit. There's a full staff of people at our orphanage who are there every single day in Haiti. And then there's the kids themselves who have been abandoned and starved and abused all before
I
they come to us. And then they come into us, and somehow they have faith and they have joy and they laugh. So we're way at the back of the line in terms of people who deserve to be admired in this little exercise of ours. But for us, it's given us a chance. It's given us such total perspective on life because we go from a very comfortable life here in America once a month to no electricity and no water and armored bodyguard cars going around because gang warfare,
Mhm.
and no hospitals and no place to take a kid when he's sick, and having a chance to having to play Solomon, first of all, and say, well, we will take in this child or we won't take that child is in and of itself is a very weighty thing that never leaves you. And both my wife and I have been haunted by the kids that we haven't been able to take in. And then the ones that you have, watching them go from, I mean, we have this one kid who came into us. He was covered in scabies and scabs, and for years he had to sleep. He had such a skin sensitivity to stuff that he had to sleep in long sleeve pajamas and bottoms. And it's 100 degrees in Haiti all the time with no air conditioning. And every time I would go to kiss him goodnight, I'd go. His name was Woodley. I'd go over to his bed. He was soaking wet with sweat because he was hot. He was covered in
Nice.
clothes. All the other kids were sleeping without shirts on. And this kid now is in his third year of college on a scholarship. He's in Washington D.C. He is. I see him. He FaceTimes me. He's in a suit and tie. Everybody wants him to be in their think tanks and all the rest of it. So he's going to be an ambassador to Haiti one day, and he's going to say, when they're going to say to him, well, what was your privilege that you got to this? And he's going to say, well, I grew up in an orphanage, and to have the chance to facilitate that for children and give them a chance when they don't have a chance is the biggest blessing that I will ever face. It's bigger than books. It's bigger than movies. It's bigger than anything. To be able to change a life and have the ability to steer it. Not that you get credit for it, but to just help take a path that it should have been on and put it back on that. It's an honor, and that's the best way I can describe it.
That's so beautiful. Um, this is from Z on Instagram. Big fan of Mitch. Met him when he did a book signing in Manila. Here's my question. If you were given the opportunity to relive and change a moment in your life, would you take it? If yes, can you choose just one moment and what would it be?
Well, I wouldn't choose anything that was involved with me for the reasons that I said, because I do think it's all kind of contributed to the tapestry of
Mhm.
who I've gotten to be. But I would. My mother suffered a series of strokes that took her ability to talk, and for the last few years of her life, she really couldn't speak, and we would talk to her, but I don't know. There was no recognition, So they say, people can hear you, but it's really hard to believe when they don't
Yeah.
respond. And
Yeah.
had I known that was coming, I would have liked to go back and just say, Mom, as happens, by the way, in twice, and it's not an accident, that Alfie gets his power. He discovers his power when his mother dies, but he's a kid, but he witnesses, he goes out and his mother dies while he's out playing, and then he comes back and she's died, and they're in Africa, they're missionaries, and then he wakes up the next morning and it's the same day over again and she's
Mhm.
alive, and he doesn't know what's going on, but he gets to talk to her. He has one more conversation with her, and that's what I would like to do. I would have liked to go back and say, Mom, something's going to happen pretty soon and you're not going to be able to talk to me, so let's talk everything out right now. Let's take like a week and
Oh,
just talk
wow.
through everything. I would like that chance again because I really miss her voice.
Wow. That's, oh my God. We all feel that way with if we could just have one more day, one more hour, maybe one more dinner or something.
Right?
Yeah.
More conversation.
Um, I noticed this in your work. The least likely person is the hero. Have you noticed that?
Least likely in that,
Well,
like,
like I like even Alfie.
yeah,
He's fraught. He's layered. He's
yeah,
complicated.
yeah,
The
yeah,
world doesn't see him for who he is either.
yeah. That's see, leave it to you, Adriana. That's a really good observation. I'm walking through my characters right now,
Mm,
Eddie,
yeah.
Sully, and yeah, you're right. I think I gravitate towards everyday men as the heroes of the
Mhm.
books. Um, and I hate to say it, but Tuesdays with Morrie is probably the template for that, because Morrie was the wise superhero oracle, and I was the buffoon, and
The
yet I
sponge.
and yet I'm the one who's still here telling the story. And so I think I sort of the characters that I create, who all have a little bit of piece of me in them. Um,
Mhm.
they're the lesser than, but I also
Mhm.
think that people can identify to that with that, because most of us are more in the lesser than category than the, like, I wouldn't know how to. We were talking about Robert Redford, who I really admired as an actor, as a creator, as
Yeah.
the projects that he chose. I wouldn't know how to be Robert Redford. I wouldn't know how to act if I looked that good, like Brad Pitt. I wouldn't know how to walk around. I'm just not
They're
used
like
to.
no, you're right. They're
I don't know
not
how they
only
do it.
matinee idols, they're
Yeah.
deities
I
on
know
some level.
Tom Brady. He grew up around here, and I covered him when he was a football player, so I know him. I don't know how he gets up in the morning and looks in the mirror and says, "Look at how good looking I am." I mean, it must be so weird to walk down the street and have everybody, go, feel like you're like a god. I've
Oh, yeah.
never felt anything remotely close to that, and so I identify more on the on the other on the
Please don't
other.
say on the schlub side because
Not
'cause they're
this.
not
Well, I
schlubs.
don't know. God's in the mortal, far, far, far more mortal.
From the mortal side, because
Mortal side.
yeah.
My characters are very mortal. Yes.
And things happen to them
Yeah.
that are cataclysmic.
Yes.
And and it's always fascinating. I mean, from Frankie Presto, I mean, I could just go through all of them. They are faced with an absolute dire situation, and
Right.
it is a page turner to see how you get them out of that and into the light. It's
But
always
yeah, but I think that
amazing.
that's what also gets people engaged because,
Yeah,
like you say,
true.
Frankie Preston, what would you do if you were this innocent kid who suddenly discovered he had this gift, to change people's lives with his music,
Mhm.
or in the Little Liar, Nico is just honest, and then he's this honest 11-year-old kid, and Nazis trick him into lying to his own family and his own people, and he just realizes, oh my
Mhm.
God, I just accidentally sent all of my family and loved ones off to their deaths. How would you react to that? Or Alfie in Twice here now, he has this power to do things. What would you do if given to that?
Yeah.
I think if people can slot themselves into my characters, then they're
Mhm.
engaged with the story. Because in addition to trying to provide a good story, which I try to do every time I write a book, but I also want people, like, for me, the highest compliment isn't like, man, oh man, his prose, like, God, it sings on every page. I mean, that would be lovely, but um, I'm happier if someone says that, I just finished your book. It really made me think. When people
Yeah.
say it really
Mhm.
made me think, or it really made me wonder what I would do in that situation, or even better, it made me call my brother who I've been estranged from for years, or it made me go kiss my wife or whatever. Now I feel like I've done something, besides entertain people. I've touched that part of their brain or their heart that's open, that has been moved by other people's stories since the dawn of time. That's why we tell stories, to move people.
Mhm.
And if
Mhm.
I've moved them, then I've done what I wanted to do.
And it's actually a gift to humanity right now. I feel like Twice is a book folks should read, particularly people that are very upset with the direction of the dialogue in this country.
Yeah.
There are lessons in here about how we treat one another, and it's really interesting. It starts with how we treat ourselves, doesn't it?
Yeah. 100%.
How much we can forgive ourselves. Okay, this is from Jeannie Satra on Facebook. She said, I don't think this is a second chance story, but I want to share this with Mitch. Okay, so this is for Jeannie. Our foster daughter, Rebecca, who had muscular dystrophy and could only move one hand and used a powered chair, came to us when she was 17 years old. This is similar to some of the kids that you take in. This is back to Jeannie. She had the same joy as Morrie and had 2 degrees and an MFT.
Mm,
She lived a fun, dedicated, and full life at 43 years. She loved Morrie too.
mm.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. Wonderful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
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 It's so great when we hear these. Okay. This is from DG McCready on Instagram. This is a second chance story for Mitch, but it's a little different. Technically, my wife and I had 2 chances before we decided that one another was the one that we were the one. We were both born on the same day in the same hospital, hours apart. Our moms were in the recovery room together. Chance number one was only in proximity, as I was only a couple of bassinets away from her in the nursery. Chance number two was after her family moved away when she was 1 year old, and they would come back to neighboring cottages, one owned by my family and the other by her grandparents. When she was 16, I fell in love. We grew close, but I froze and did not know what to do. When she went home, I wrote countless love letters. She would reply, just friends. But I never gave up. When we were 19, love struck us both, and we were married 3 years later. We're on year 33 now with 3 kids and 4 grandkids.
Wow.
Do you see, like, but people just reading and hearing about the novel, they're revisiting. Now, before I let you go, I got to ask this question because I do call this your most romantic book yet, but it is replete with the deeper themes of self acceptance, self discovery, and redemption. That's all there. Okay. But I want to ask you this, and I've been asking folks this lately. um, folks that are far older than we are. Like, is your life now that you're 90 or 70? I said, are you thinking about your childhood more? And categorically, across the boards, Mitch, they say, it's as if I can remember every detail of the girl I was in love with in high school.
Hmm.
And it's playing like it's in a loop. And I'm thinking about her and I'm thinking about her. This book is for young to old. I mean, I don't care what age you are. This book applies to you. My 23-year-old daughter read it and she went crazy for it.
Hmm.
So my question is, does in your mind, do you think maybe the creation of your books, the the writing, do you think it's a way to make a story out of all these disparate parts, days, and people?
Yeah, I think probably every writer would sort of say yes to that. I think you would say it too. Look at all the families that you write about, and then look at your own family existence. You know,
Mhm.
uh, I think the idea of love. I'm glad that I waited this long to write my book about love. Because I do think you understand love better the older you get. That doesn't mean you don't feel it. You feel it. I remember feeling it. That's why I wrote that Alfie meets Gianna, the girl of his dreams,
Yes.
8. When he's 8
Yeah.
in
They're 8
Africa,
years old.
elephant.
Mhm.
And so I do think it's possible to start the kindling of a fire of love very young. But that's the thing about love that people get wrong. They're always looking for the ignition. They want to see a spark that turns into a fire. They want to feel that ignition. What they don't pay attention to is after the flame has ignited, what changes that flame, what affects the flame, what really turns the life of that flame is how you treat the flame. Do you blow on it and it grows? Do you snuff it and it goes out? Do you throw stuff on top of it and still it starts to rage and burns everything down? And we're all looking to ignite the flame, but very few people are looking to see what it takes to keep it going. And that's what you come to appreciate later in life. And that's Alfie's great revelation about this woman that he's been in love with his whole life, and she's better than him in every way. And then he makes this terrible mistake. And in many ways, it's a boy meets girl, boy gets girl, boy loses girl, boy.
Mhm.
Then I'm not gonna tell you a fourth part.
Yeah.
But he really, because he has to live in the world where she doesn't love him anymore, then you realize what true love really takes. And there's that wonderful expression, I've used it before: the only whole heart is a broken heart. And function you can't really use your heart totally until it's been broken. And then you realize, that how vulnerable it is, how much you have to protect it, and what you have to do to get that flame, to nurture that flame going. So
Mm.
I'm glad I waited this long, because I wouldn't have understood that. I wouldn't have been even saying any of these sentences to you if you had interviewed the Tuesdays with Morrie me, 30
Yeah. Yeah.
37 years of age. And that's why I think it probably is my most romantic book, because when you understand what love is, you can create romance in your characters. When you don't, you're just writing sex scenes.
That's
You're
right.
just
That's
writing,
right.
and then they came into the room and they passionately kissed and they all the, but when there's a scene where Alfie and Gianna get stuck in a revolving
Yeah.
door at a department store, and they have to have their most serious conversation of their lives when they really realize they're in love with each other through glass, because they're stuck and they can't touch each other and they can't reach it. That's so much of what love really is. There's always a barrier between you and the other person, and it's what are you willing to have a kiss through the glass in order to say, we're not going to let the things that separate us keep us apart. So that was a metaphor and a movie scene and everything rolled into
It's
one.
so perfect. So perfect.
And I wouldn't have been able
Absolutely.
to create that when I was 37, but hopefully I know what I'm doing now.
Oh my gosh. Well, Mitch Albom, you're a national treasure. You're an international treasure. Your books are in my library long before I met you. And I didn't even get to all the people that wrote in.
Mm.
But just know that what you do, it's a way to give a little bit of yourself that people can carry with them from all you've learned. And I love the fact that it isn't about you. This is very rare in a man. It's very rare in a man. The great artists often it's all about them, and they build a life that's all about them. But I have a feeling Janine had a lot to do with it. I think Morrie had a lot to do with it. Your life experience, um, but you're just the real deal. It's the highest compliment I can pay you.
Well, it is the highest compliment, and I take it very humbly, and thank you for saying that. Morrie, taught me that very simplistic phrase, "Giving is living," and
Yes.
it's just the more I go on, the more I'm not trying to preach it to anybody. I'm just saying I
Mm-mm.
find it to be true, and the more I practice it, the better I feel. So thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your books,
Okay.
Adriana. They're a gift. Like I say, now I'm looking over because your book's over there in the pile, and I'm like it's out of my arm reach. I'd have to disappear from the thing. But it's my turn to celebrate yours next. But thank you for helping me bring twice to the. I'm very very proud of this book, and I dedicated it to my wife, uh,
Yes.
and our love story, and I'd like people,
Mhm.
she's very private, and I would never write something about her to bring her to the world because she's very private. But if you want to know what she's kind of like, you can read about Gianna in the book, and that's
Wow.
yeah.
That's so because she's so real and full bodied, and I love that character.
I won't say full body to her because they should.
No, say she's very slim.
Yeah,
Beautifully, a beautiful figure. Let's put it that way. A beautiful woman, and the eyes and the hair and the whole. Oh, she was like just a vision,
thanks.
and that carried through the whole book, and it was just beautiful. I cannot thank you enough. We are rooting for you. We want this book twice to go to number one. And it will. I have a feeling. I just have heard so much early buzz about it, and readers, every time one of your books comes out, Mitch, there's a cause for celebration. And this one, this is the love one, everybody.
Yeah.
This is romance. This is you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.